I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to, I'm going to read your bios. So I guess I'll start with Deanna since she's going first. Deanna Jones has served as the executive director of the Thompson Center in Woodstock, Vermont for 11 years. The Thompson is a vibrant, multi-purpose senior center serving 1,500 individuals annually and is a local hub for education, wellness, social activities, and aging at home support. Deanna serves as chair of the Vermont Association of Senior Centers and Meal Providers, represents Vermont on the National Council on Aging Senior Center Leadership Collaborative, and on the Advisory Council for the Tri-State Learning Collaborative on Aging. Deanna and her husband live in Pomfret, Vermont with their 4 children. So that's Deanna. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm going to read Mike's bio now, just so we have it in our heads before he speaks. Mike Riederer is Tri-Valley Transit's Community Relations Manager in the Orange/Northern Windsor region. He joined Tri-Valley in 2019, having devoted most of his 25-year nonprofit career to youth development organizations. He is excited about the multifaceted impact public transportation has on communities and enjoys working with partners throughout the region to better serve people in need and respond to environmental changes. Great. Well, I'm very happy to have both of you with us, and I think I will let you go ahead, Deanna.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I love any opportunity to talk about the senior center and the services that we provide in the Woodstock and surrounding towns. Just to begin with a quick overview of the Thompson, in case you're not familiar with what we do. We serve about 1,500 people annually, and that's roughly 150 people a day that we see in one way or another, either through meals or programs and activities at the center. Primarily what I want to talk to you about today is the Aging at Home program. Home Share is the newest piece of that, and a little bit more about what we do for transportation currently in the area before I hand it over to Mike. So our Aging at Home program was founded in 2016 and added on to our existing services as a senior center. We based our Aging at Home program on the Village to Village network model. And the Aging at Home really provides any type of connection to existing resources or finding resources for people who are aging in their homes. So this could be referrals to vetted service providers. We check references for anyone that we give out as a referral. Caregivers, housekeepers, home repairs, even legal assistance, who to ask for questions about insurance or Medicare, and a lot of free medical equipment. We turn over between 40 and 50 pieces of medical equipment every month, so people can donate it to us when they're done with it. As long as it's in good, used, clean condition, we can take in any medical equipment. We clean it up, check it out, make sure it is safe, and then pass it on to anyone who needs it for free. That is a booming business lately, and I think it definitely saves people the expense and keeps those items circulating instead of filling up landfills or sitting somewhere not in use. We added most recently to our services home sharing, and this was our attempt to help address in a small way the housing issues in our area. We were trained by Home Share Vermont in Burlington on their methods for facilitating home share matches. And we also believed that another benefit of home sharing would be for our older population to be able to have someone in their home if they might be nervous about being there at night alone, or have small amount of support with things around the house or yard work or snow removal, that a home share situation is really ideal to help someone stay at home if that's their goal, while simultaneously helping with housing. So I'm going to do a quick screen share so that I can show you where to find more information about this. So I've just taken you quickly to our website, thompsoncenter.org. And we have on our website, under services, you can find lots of details about the Aging at Home program that I just spoke about, as well as our meals, Meals on Wheels, and in-house meals and nutrition, and home share, and of course, transportation. But home share, if anyone is interested in that, you can find out more here. And then down at the bottom, we have the applications, links to applications to either be a host or a guest. We have a wonderful Aging at Home coordinator, Shari Borzakowski, who manages this program and has done a great job of really getting to know the applicants and working towards finding the right matches for people. So that's a little bit about our website and where to find information. The Aging at Home section here will give people more of an idea of all the types of services that we provide. Really, our goal is to be one number to call for any type of aging at home question. And if there's something we can't answer, we will find out what you need and make that connection. Let's see. I think that's about it for that. Transportation has been something that has changed over the years, and especially through COVID. Before COVID, we were giving about 5,000 rides a year annually, and those were local rides and medical rides out of town. That number is down. In the COVID years, it was even between 400 and 600 rides a year, so quite a bit of a change. We have done quite a bit with volunteers for transportation over time. Right now, what we're doing primarily is local rides, so rides in our vehicle to and from the senior center to people's homes, to Max, to the clinic, dentists in town, physical therapists, but all very local. A few years back, right during COVID actually, we worked with Tri-Valley Transit to have them providing the rides that there was elderly and disabled funding for, because people get a certain amount of free rides. And so we pass those rides, if they're out of town, over to Tri-Valley Transit to provide. But we've had a long time relationship with Tri-Valley Transit going back, I think about 15 years, 12 to 15 years, I think, before my time, but the entire time that I've been there. And just lately, more more opportunities are coming up, which is why we're here to talk to you. And I'll hand it over to Mike to talk about the micro transit project and goals.
Thanks so much, Deanna. Yes, it has been a great partnership, and one that we're continuing to develop and work with. And COVID certainly set us back quite a ways as well, as far as ridership and capacity. Quick background, Tri-Valley Transit formed as a merger, I think it was 2017, between Stagecoach, which folks in this area might be more familiar with, and Actor, Addison County Transit Resources, which was active in Addison County. Together, we serve the Addison, Orange, and Northern Windsor County regions, with us focusing on that Orange and Northern Windsor region. Our services are a combination of our fixed route and deviated fixed route bus routes, both commuter routes on the 89 and 91 corridors, and local circulator service in Bradford area and the Randolph area. For our demand response programs, we primarily serve people that are older, 60 years of age or older, which the older I get, the younger that seems. So I always hesitate to use that elderly term. Also people with disabilities. And we have a number of developing programs that can also serve people in recovery and people seeking medical appointments that don't qualify for transportation under other programs, but still need that help getting to their appointments. Most of those demand response trips are provided by volunteer drivers. We use our professional bus drivers in our wheelchair accessible buses when that's necessary, or as a backup if volunteers aren't available. With that, I will put in a quick plug. We do have a desperate critical need for volunteer drivers. So we're always looking for people to join that program. We do drive throughout the Orange Northern Windsor region. Folks are very flexible, can always select what rides they're interested in giving. That's just transportation support, not going to appointments or doing shopping with the individual seeking assistance, just the driving curb to curb. And can certainly contact us for more information about that. In our partnership with Thompson Senior Center, we really focus on that demand response service. Providing trips into and around that Woodstock area, as Deanna mentioned. And I think we have been trying to expand that partnership. We try to take as much of the transportation pressure as we can, but frankly, it has been challenging with limited capacity these last couple of years. But looking ahead, one of the things that we've talked about is the potential benefit of a circulator service in Woodstock. Adding those services are expensive. It's a lot of money to have a bus on the road running around town continuously. So there is this microtransit program that VTrans has rolled out, which is really, it's that on-demand service within a designated zone. So we would define a zone in the Woodstock area that where this transportation is available, and have some number of vehicles present available during this time period during the day for people to access. The software would really that use of technology and software allows people to request those rides and schedule those rides either in advance, call up and say, I have an appointment next week that I need to get to, can I schedule a ride on your service? And we could plug that in. Or if they are sitting at their house and they need to get to the grocery store, they can, pick up their smartphone or their tablet and go on the app to schedule that trip and be picked up either at a designated time or just as soon as possible. This has been experimented with in rural and suburban areas and has shown great success. Rural areas, it's honestly still up in the air. We're not sure how it will work, but VTrans and Tri-Valley Transit and other transportation providers in the state are very excited about the potential. The Green Mountain Transit, GMT, did roll out a pilot project in Montpelier in 2021, and that microtransit service replaced 3 fixed route bus routes. And it certainly had its challenges, especially trying to roll something out new in the middle of a pandemic. But it's showing great promise. It really is serving folks in the community. As I mentioned, the microtransit service would operate within a zone that would be determined through a planning process, and anywhere between 1, 2, and 3 vehicles might be operating within that zone. during the operating hours to provide those services. So it is a good potential as a replacement for a circular type service. Rural concerns, it is challenging. You know, our people are more spread out. Our places are more challenging to access. So that is one of those balancing acts, you know, in the planning process, looking at, you know, if we have a smaller area, the response can be quicker, yet there's going to be less demand, and, you know, but we could operate with a smaller number of vehicles. We expand that zone, well, now we're serving more people, but the response time is going to be longer. So maybe we need more vehicles. And of course, the funding question comes in there. So those are some of the things that we need to, we'll be needing to look at through our planning process. Fees and fare structures. Currently, all or virtually all public transit in Vermont is fare free. We'll be continuing that for at least a year into the future. After that, you know, things are up in the air depending on how state transportation budgets go. So those fare and fee structures would be determined in the future. As of, you know, our bus routes right now are all fare free, but microtransit could take on something different there. As far as the current projects, VTrans did provide support, financial support for providers throughout the state to go through these studies, these feasibility studies, to determine if we are able to provide, you know, if there could be some good microtransit service in the communities that we serve. We decided to start with our Middlebury region. There's some good shuttle bus service there that seemed most prepared to take on a microtransit project. So we've been working through that process, ton of data collection on ridership and the places that people access and where people live, and, you know, little pockets of neighborhoods where there's high transportation needs. That's something that as we move on and complete that study, which all of our data gathering and planning has been completed, looking at developing the implementation plan next. So those are things that as we start to look at Woodstock, we're hoping to look at Woodstock and Bradford area in the Orange Northern Windsor region. We're really going to need community support from Woodstock to be looking at those ridership numbers. Deanna mentioned, you know, 5,000 rides prior to COVID. Of course, we've all taken big dips there. So trying to judge and estimate the future need is it's a tricky endeavor, but something we'll be looking towards doing. And then we'll be able to do that study in Woodstock and figure out what sort of implementation of a service there could look like. Following that data gathering process, we're working with VIA. It's a company that was selected to provide these feasibility studies statewide. Phenomenal company, has been working with microtransit in a number of other regions and is working with Green Mountain Transit in Montpelier. So they're pretty familiar with Vermont as well, and, you know, some of the unique aspects of public transit here. So we gather that data, they'll go through their analysis, we'll develop that implementation plan, and then we can submit to VTrans to be able to start a project in Woodstock. We're really, you know, we'll have to see where the funding situation stands. It may be a little trickier starting a new service rather than replacing service, but you know, we're really hopeful that we'll be able to expand down into that area and provide some of that consistent, reliable service to the transit dependent folks, but also for people traveling through the area and other residents that are just looking for, you know, that convenient access to public transit and save the emissions and the money and keep the cars parked in their garage.
I'm not sure you said, Mike, but the microtransit project is targeted toward all ages, not just older adults, right?
Yes, absolutely. It would be an open public service available to anyone in the region. There certainly we would anticipate a high usage for people that are older, or that have disabilities that we're serving now, and Thompson is serving now through our E&D programs. But it would also be very much available to the public. And I think, when you look at an area like Woodstock, I think the tourist population is another one that we would be considering.
And the last time we talked, you were thinking of possibly the studies, maybe beginning in the summertime. Is that still a possibility for our area?
Probably a little bit later than that. It'll certainly be in the 2023 fiscal year that starts in July. I think we've been a little bit taken a little bit more time with the Middlebury project than we initially expected. We were hoping to have those implementation plans prepared this spring, but with those not completed yet, I think our process is probably pushed back a couple of months. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Woodstock is our next priority to look at.
That's great. Did you have anything to add, Deanna?
I don't think so. It really is encouraging. We've hoped that Tri-Valley Transit would be able to help us more with rides in our area for people of all ages. We do still have the Thompson, sponsored vehicle that we lease, and we pay drivers to operate and are giving the daily rides around the area. So I look forward to understanding more how that might be able to be utilized in the microtransit project, and maybe even the drivers or the vehicle as one of the vehicles. I don't know how that'll work, but we're open to however it does.
That's, I think, how, as we work with VIA on the feasibility study, a lot of those things will come into play. What kind of resources are available, how, where are the key places that need to be included in our zone, in our pick up and drop off area. I'm looking forward. We do want to have good wheelchair accessibility, but maybe there are ways that we can combine, having, if we just determine that 2 vehicles are necessary to provide the trips, maybe one of them's a wheelchair accessible bus and another is a smaller vehicle, more size for those for those shorter trips where it's not needed, or trips where there'll be fewer number of people and not needed as to have the capacity.
And when you talked about data collection and community support, I know we've talked about reports and being able to share what places we take people to and have taken people to. What other community groups and data would you be looking for?
Well, when we went through this process in the Middlebury community, VIA was looking for how many riders we had getting on and off at every stop within the town, so they could basically develop maps to show where the highest needs were. And they're looking at the different, just the different developments and how the population pockets in the town. So where they would, where we would be able to know that we would have to focus some services in that area. So I think they'll be looking for similar information in the Woodstock area, that they would certainly be looking at our volunteer driver program. I think they'd be wanting to speak with you and get your information from your volunteers and paid drivers where they're going, so they can really start to develop that same sense of need. One thing that whether it's Sustainable Woodstock or other folks in town might be able to help us out with is identifying some of the other needs that aren't being addressed, focused on people that are older or people with disabilities. As the advantage we had in Middlebury is that there's that existing bus service there that's already serving people of all ages and all backgrounds. So that is going to be our big challenge, I think, in Woodstock, is gathering that information that shows not only what we've been doing, but what the potential is there that has been untapped and unmet to this date.
Yeah, that's great and really helpful. Thank you both for that overview. I'll call out the fact that if folks have questions, please just run your cursor over the screen and there's a little smiley face. It says reactions. If you click it, you can push a button that says raise your hand. So you can virtually raise your hand. Very cool. But I wanted to ask like a real beginner level question, because this is pretty new to me. So sorry about that. But I just want to understand, like, there would be these vehicles that folks could like schedule trips with through an app, say, and there'd be riders that would be hired to drive them, correct? So what would they do during their days? Just go from kind of scheduled appointment to scheduled appointment driving folks? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, it really is. You could almost think of it as an Uber type service.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other factors there is that, yes, we want to provide a sufficient number of vehicles on the road to meet everybody's needs and expectations. We also want to make sure that drivers aren't just sitting on the corner for hours and hours every day without any trips. It just makes the program more expensive and isn't meeting those needs. So that's where the study really will come in and help to identify that. How many vehicles are needed? How many? How big should that zone be? What areas should we cover? And I think the other thing there, Ginevra, just to emphasize, the app process can get really scary to people that either aren't tech savvy or living in communities where there's not great cell service or Wi-Fi access. And one thing with these programs is that both will be accommodated. Be both app-based, but also you can still call our office and say, hey, I need that trip. So the phone still works.
I was wondering about that. All right, well, Chuck has a question. Want to go ahead and ask it, Chuck?
Yeah, hi. Chuck Fenton out in Heartland. And my question is, will there be the possibility of a fixed or flexible route service through Quechee to White River Junction? To me, that seems like has been an imperative for many, many years. If you go on Route 4 at drive time, you just see hundreds of people streaming back and forth. And I've always wondered, why is there no either fixed or flex route service to that area? Thanks.
That's an excellent question, Chuck. And I think one that comes up frequently in conversations is that Route 4 corridor, really all the way from Rutland through Woodstock to Lebanon. I think you're right. And it's one that gets brought up in VTrans circles a lot. I think Tri-Valley Transit is one that falls into that area. Marble Valley, operating out of Rutland, is a potential provider there, and I think it's SEVT, Southeast. The mover is right on the edge there. Route 4 is almost a dividing line for our two regions. So some of the conversation is who can take it on and what would the ridership look like, and having to put that legwork and effort in. But or on the other hand, if there's another way to provide that service. I know we've been having some conversations with VTrans on setting up van pool programs in that area, so people, you know, living and working in similar areas can commute together without dedicating all of the bus resources. Because you know, looking for creative opportunities there to meet that need in an efficient and environmentally conscious and least expensive way possible.
Well, out here in Heartland, I've been many years living here, and it seems like we're always in the desert. We have you on the north, Mover on the south, Marble Valley on the west, and we get no service at all, except I guess we get obviously Medicaid transport, but in terms of more general transit service, we just have nothing out here. It would seem to me that a route through Quechee to White River would be heavily used, and I'm not talking just about employment-based, workforce transit, which is the problem with the Mover. You know, the Mover used to have service midday from exit 9 into White River and Lebanon, and that was given up actually years ago. And so now it's only early morning or late afternoon. And for those of us that are looking for a schedule that's not based on employment, that is a big challenge also. So anyway, I hope that you would, in your design, would work with the other providers and see if you can find a way to provide even van service along Route 4 corridor. Because once you connect with the AT down in the White River area, then you basically have Monday through Friday service throughout the area. The problem is just getting down to, let's say, White River Junction or the Lebanon Library, whichever is the most convenient.
Yeah, definitely good points. I will certainly elevate that, and then, you know, continue those conversations and make sure that we're thinking about you guys in that corridor and what more we can do in that area.
Thank you.
Mike, would the bubble that you talked about for the microtransit project, I assume it's smaller than all the way to White River?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we've come to learn. You know, when we first started talking about microtransit, probably a couple of years ago, you know, one of the things we hoped to address were some of our more linear routes. You know, even, you know, Randolph to Montpelier was one that we were thinking about, and have come to learn that it really is more of a contained area than commuter service. That commuter service or that linear trips are really hard with microtransit. Because the idea of microtransit is that it's demand response. So if you call and you need that trip, you know, 30 miles down the road, well, that's a 2-hour round trip. So, you know, the vehicle is gone and won't be back back to be able to respond to that immediate demand.
So what's like the general area, excuse me, that the microtransit in Woodstock is looking at then?
That's what would be determined through the planning process.
Oh, okay.
You know, I think we'd want to, and it's that balancing act, you know, trying to figure out, you know, the larger you make the area, the more vehicles you need to have that response. They try to develop it so, you know, if you called up and said, I need a ride and I'm at, you know, this address, that the service should be able to respond within 15 or 20 minutes. So it's not immediate, but it's pretty quick. So if it gets to the point that, you know, you call up and it's not going to be, you know, we can't get the vehicle to you for half hour, 40 minutes. Well, that's not the level of convenience that that people would be looking for. That really meets those needs. So that means either expanding the number of vehicles or shrinking the area to make that work. And yes, through the planning process, those are all will be identified.
That makes sense. I want to make sure that we've got the comments in the chat heard. Linda said, Scheduled trips from Woodstock, even twice a month, to the co-op in Hartford or Price Chopper in West Leb would be useful. And then Todd, it looks like, is agreeing with Chuck on the priority. There should be several scheduled trips a day in both directions, White River Junction to Woodstock, making intermediate stops and perhaps farther west. And Linda said, yes, scheduled trips to libraries and cultural events would expand the lives of seniors who can't drive as well.
So I can take a first attempt at especially Linda's comments. For more than 10 years, we've had 2 shopping trips a month with Stagecoach that and then Tri-Valley Transit that the Thompson sponsored. And at times there were 5 or 6 riders, and they could get dropped off at Price Chopper or Walmart or any place that they wanted to. They left Woodstock at 9 in the morning. They made a pickup in Bridgewater, or the Thompson would bring people to from Bridgewater and or any of the towns that we serve. And then they make a stop in Quechee and pick up a rider, at least one rider there. I think they made a stop at the library also. But we've promoted it on the listservs. We've promoted it everywhere for months. In the last probably 6 months to a year, we've been paying for that service with only 1 rider, 2 riders, some weeks no riders. And if there's a way to promote it so that people actually utilize that, we would be willing to continue it. But I don't know if people don't see or hear our marketing, but we've been paying for that exact thing to the first and third Wednesday of every month for at least 10 years to go shopping in West Lebanon. And then at the peak of COVID, when New Hampshire had a higher COVID rate, we stayed in Vermont and went to Rutland. But we have had that kind of shopping trip. And as far as cultural events, we do quite a bit of volunteer rides and try to make sure people get to where they need to go. If they just call and ask, we can try to find drivers for people that can't drive, to that kind of thing. So we're open to it. Just reach out to us.
That's really helpful for me to know. I didn't know that. And the shopping trips, just to clarify, like, would you have to be over 60 to use that service?
You don't have to be, right, Mike? Anyone can get on those. And we still sponsor them, but anyone can ride on those, as far as I know.
Yes, that was an open bus route that we had. That was kind of it, but as Deanna mentioned, it was supported by the E&D program with a focus on people that were older or had disabilities. But it was an open is an open route that anyone can use. And I think we're in the same spot. We're ready to. We haven't run that for the last couple of months because of the lack of riders, but it is something that we could be prepared to bring back.
Yeah. And the Thompson pays the local match for that and is also willing to continue. But they're just, even after a really big push on promoting it, we just still weren't getting more than 1 or 2 riders at the most.
Chuck had another question.
Thank you, Ginevra. Yes, I'd like to advocate, as you're exploring these routes, I'd like to advocate for making the vans bike friendly. I have an e-bike, and e-bikes are catching on like wildfire because I help Vital Communities trying to promote that project. And I know that if you could take an e-bike, like down the AT has bike racks, as you know, on their buses. But if you can get somewhere and then have an e-bike to get around the local area, whether it's White River or whatever, it gives you a lot more flexibility than just having to walk or hope you can find an AT bus. So I'd like to advocate for making the vans bike friendly wherever possible, and maybe, specifying what kind of bicycle is permissible, because of course there are a lot of different kinds of bikes, and some of them are so big and so heavy that obviously they would not work. But I happen to have a folding e-bike which weighs 50 pounds, and that's perfect because I think you can actually possibly carry it on as opposed to putting it on. Anyway, so I wanted to advocate for making it bike friendly. Thanks.
I love that, Chuck. We also have bike racks on all of our buses, carry 2 bikes. You're right. It's an interesting thought on the e-bikes. I know some of them can get kind of heavy. I actually made a note for myself. We'll check into the weight capacity on those. But and we do have, it happens a lot on our commuter routes. We have a few folks that take the bus in from a park and ride into Lebanon or White River, and ride the rest of their way to their office, and piece those commutes together. And we've talked a lot over the last couple of years how much we would love to see more recreational users just hopping on. And you're right, the e-bikes, it adds a whole new element to to that multimodal transportation, piecing together the bike ride and the bus to gosh, to even just get out and ride in different areas. It's a great thought.
And also, responding to what Deanna said about not having riders on the route, I think you should put stickers on gas pumps. When people fill up their car for $50, $60, $70, they might think twice about the possibility of taking transit instead of spending all that money on fuel. Just my opinion.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Now that I know about that, Deanna, I mean, I must have just missed it somehow, but I definitely will be talking that up and seeing if there's interest, because I know there is. People just must not be using it.
No, and I think COVID, certainly has had such an impact about if people want to ride public transit together like that.
And Chuck had a good point about the gas prices too. I think, one thing that, traditionally, and it's before my time with TVT, but the last time we saw that big spike and gas prices went up to $3 or $4 a gallon, we saw an almost immediate jump in our ridership. They were creeping up, $2.50, $3, $3.50, and we saw like a 2-week lag, and then just an incredible jump in the number of people that were getting on the bus instead of getting into their cars. This year we haven't seen that as much, and one of the things that we suspect is with COVID, like we're here tonight, so many more people can work from home, and that becomes a cost-saving option. So yes, there are those things that people can turn to public transit to save money on, but hopping on Zoom and working remotely are also have become more palatable options for employees and employers. So we haven't quite seen that jump yet that we were anticipating, but hopefully we do get more people that turn to public transit for work and shopping and recreational needs as a result.
Also, sorry to monopolize here, but Deanna, coordinating with Aging in Heartland out here in Heartland, there are volunteers who spend a fair amount of time and resources driving people, seniors I'm talking about, down to the Upper Valley, whether it's to medical appointments or to just other things. And it would seem that some of that could be coordinated better if there were a service along Route 4, because it would be so much easier for a volunteer driver just to take people to Quechee and hop on transit than to drive them all the way into the Upper Valley and then have to wait around or pick them up or something. I'm just suggesting that coordinating with the local aging services, of which Aging in Heartland is one, but as you know, they're now beginning to pop up in the other communities also.
Why don't we talk offline about promoting that in Heartland, and then figuring out a stop where they could stop that route to, meet the volunteers. In general, it leaves the Thompson around 9 and goes down through, and then it's back by 12:30 or so to the Thompson.
Well, I would definitely take it, especially especially if I could take my e-bike along. I would definitely go that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that. Just want to read Jesse's comment that the inertia is such a great barrier. Adopting a bus must become a real campaign. I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool. Some kind of boost will be invented, but change does take time. And coordinating with events, emphasizing the bus is a good promo. Yeah, we're planning on doing an electric vehicle event at some point this fall. So kind of giving folks other options, I think would be great along with that. Definitely. Are there any other questions or comments on here?
I really appreciate being able to share with a different audience, and especially if you're able to include it in your column. I think that'll be even more of a different audience than usually hears our message. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, I've learned a lot, and I definitely would like to write a column about both what's currently happening, and offered, as
Mhm.
well as the pilot. So I'll be in touch. Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you all. Nice to see you, Chuck, as always.
Thank you, Deanna. Great to see you. We'll see you at lunch one of these days.
Good. Very good. Have a good night, everyone.
Right.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Mike.